$900 billion. That is the private valuation Anthropic is closing on this week, and it just leapfrogged OpenAI's 852 for the first time in history. No keynote announced it. No press release marked the moment. By Wednesday evening, the most valuable private AI company on Earth had quietly changed names, and 5 other shifts in the same 24 hours explain exactly how it happened. Start with the obvious tell. Nvidia shares opened around 218 on Wednesday, slipped to 212, then closed at 213.95. Fourth straight quarter where the stock fell after a beat and raise print. Beat and raise means the company beat estimates and raised guidance. The stock went down anyway. That is not a reaction to a bad number. That is a market staring at something it cannot price. Here is what that something is. While traders argued about whether the AI build-out has peaked, Jensen Huang flew into Taipei, walked into the T-17 and T-18 plots inside the science park, faced about 1,000 of his own employees, and called Taiwan the epicenter of the AI revolution. Not a partner. Not a supplier. The epicenter. That is positioning language, and it landed in a single afternoon. Then he attached a number to it. $150 billion a year, every year, of Nvidia money flowing into Taiwan. 150 separate Taiwanese partners locked into the supply chain. A new global headquarters going up on that same campus, scheduled to open by 2030. That is not a roadshow visit. That is a hostage map for the entire industry, drawn in one trip. Now zoom out. The real reason that map matters is sitting in a term sheet in San Francisco. Anthropic, the company that makes the Claude Assistant, is closing this week on more than $30 billion of new money. Pre-money valuation. Above $900 billion. Co-led by Sequoia, Dragoner, Altimeter and Greenoaks, each writing roughly $2 billion. Microsoft and Nvidia itself reportedly tagging along on the round. $900 billion is the headline. The story inside the number is the timeline. Anthropic was worth $61.5 billion in March of last year. $183 billion by September. $380 billion in February. And as of this week, north of 900. That is a roughly 15-fold jump in 14 months for a single private company. There is no public market analog for that curve. Now the part nobody is putting on a slide. OpenAI's most recent private valuation is $852 billion. The Anthropic round, if it prints at these terms, makes Claude's parent the most valuable private AI company on Earth for the first time. The lab founded by the people who walked out on Sam Altman just leapfrogged the lab they left. Quiet move. Massive consequence. And it gets worse for the OpenAI side of the story. Anthropic's annualized revenue went from about $9 billion at the end of 2025 to $30 billion by the end of March. Insiders say this is the final private round before a public listing targeted for October. Translation. Investors who buy in this week are buying the last seat at the table before the IPO escalator opens. That sets the stage for every other piece of news that landed today. Because once one lab is worth $900 billion in private hands, every adjacent player, Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, the Chinese champions, has to react in real time. And reaction is exactly what we saw, on 3 different continents, in the same 24 hours. Move number 1 came out of Beijing. Bloomberg reported on Tuesday that the Chinese government has now expanded its overseas travel restrictions to top AI talent at private firms, including DeepSeek and Alibaba. Founders, researchers, senior executives, they now need formal government approval before they can leave the country. This is not a quiet HR memo. This is a state declaring that human capital is a national security asset. And here is where it gets really interesting. Bloomberg reported similar curbs on DeepSeek executives back in December. 2 Mainus co-founders were quietly blocked from traveling before that. The new May 26th wave is the 3rd escalation in 6 months. Beijing is no longer worried about chip exports. Beijing is worried about people walking out of Pudong Airport with a checked bag and a model architecture in their head. Move number 2 came out of Redmond. Microsoft pushed its May update for Copilot Studio live on Tuesday, and quietly switched on something called Computer Using Agents in general availability. Translation. Enterprise customers can now build software bots that look at a regular Windows screen, click buttons, fill forms, read PDFs and run desktop apps with no API behind them. The same way a human temp would. The GA build ships with 2 underlying brains. OpenAI's computer use model and Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 4.5. So every Fortune 500 buying Copilot Studio today is, by default, paying both OpenAI and Anthropic on the same invoice. That is the real reason the $900 billion valuation prints. Anthropic is no longer a research bet. It is sitting inside every enterprise procurement contract Microsoft signs this quarter. Move number 3 was Google's. The Gemini Interactions API schema flipped to a new default on May 26th. The old schema is being deleted on June 8th. 2 weeks, hard cut. Every developer building on Gemini, who does not migrate by then sees their production traffic break. Google does not normally move that aggressively on a forced upgrade. They are clearing the runway for something, and the calendar lines up with their summer rollout. Now layer the consequences. Wall Street did not love what it saw. Nvidia had just reported $81.6 billion in revenue, 92% year-over-year growth in the data center business, and management guided $91 billion for the current quarter. Eye-watering numbers. And the stock still drifted lower. Analysts watching it call this the bubble anxiety trade. The moment buyers stop rewarding beats because they are pricing in the air at the top. But wait until you see what happened to the analysts' chorus. Jensen, on the road in Taipei, told reporters Nvidia now sees $3 to $4 trillion of annual AI infrastructure spending by 2030. $3 to $4 trillion. That is roughly the entire current GDP of Germany, every year, going into racks, cooling, fiber and silicon. And he said every frontier model lab has already committed to Vera Rubin, their next chip generation, from day one. Here is the contradiction the market is choking on. If Huang is right about $4 trillion a year, Nvidia at $214 a share is cheap. If he is wrong, every AI valuation including Anthropic's $900 billion is mispriced by a full order of magnitude. There is no comfortable middle. Wednesday's tape says traders are not yet willing to pick a side, and that hesitation is exactly what the bubble debate sounds like in real time. And the labor side is just as ugly. A new study of more than 100,000 people, summarized this week, found that today's generative models now beat the average human on standardized creativity tests. The alternative uses task and the remote associates test. Not parity. Surpassed. Meanwhile, a Harvard Business Review survey out the same day says only 6% of companies fully trust their AI agents to run a core process. Capability is racing past trust, so pull the threads together. In one 24-hour stretch, the most valuable private AI lab in the world changed names. The most valuable chip company in the world planted $150 billion a year flag on a single island. Beijing locked the door on its own talent. Microsoft made agentic AI a default purchase line. And Google forced the developer ecosystem onto a new rail in 2 weeks. That is what people mean when they say AI moved quietly. No keynote. No countdown clock. Just 5 separate decisions that, taken together, redrew the map. The reshuffle did not happen in a stadium. It happened in a Sand Hill Road conference room, a Taipei Science Park, a Beijing ministry office, a Redmond release page, and a Mountain View API changelog. All before 9 p.m. Eastern on a Wednesday. And now you can see what that one decision was. Anthropic, the lab built by ex-OpenAI safety researchers, is about to close a round that values it above OpenAI for the first time in history. That single line on a term sheet is the gravity well pulling every other story you just heard. Here is the question I want you to answer in the comments. If you had to bet your own money tonight, Anthropic, OpenAI, or Nvidia? Which one is still on top a year from today? Thanks for sticking through to the end. Your support means the world. Like, share, subscribe, 3 quick taps.